Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Totally Content. We have managed to get yet another great expert to join us today, and our guest is Hans Fermont, the COO of Woodwing, joining us to discuss the publishing industry.
Hey, Hans, good to see you again. For our listeners, could you just introduce yourself?
Hi, Matt and Elizabeth. Good morning, and thanks for having me here. As Elizabeth mentioned, I'm Hans Fermont, and I'm Chief Operations at Woodwing. We are an enterprise information management software company, a SaaS company, and we've started out 25 years ago in the publishing industry. And over the last years, we've branched out into other industries such as museums, insurance companies, banking, finance, but also quality assurance, for example. So what we do, our company basically unlocks your content potential. So we make sure that you can use your content in the most efficient way. And I'm responsible for the day-to-day services operations in the company.
Well, the main reason I ask you here is for your expertise in the publishing industry. And as I know, you are also working heavily in the glam sector and into retail, etc. But publishing is slightly different, I think, compared to what other marketers do. So what made you step into the publishing industry? What was the trigger?
Well, I guess the main trigger is that in publishing, creating content and publishing content is actually the core business, which is, I think, differentiates it from many other industries or brands that are using content to promote their brands. In publishing, the brands are basically the core of the business. Yeah, so when we started out, that's about 25 years ago now. Adobe was just a very small software company. You almost can't imagine. And basically, it was a start of multi-channel publishing. Until then, print has been basically the core of publishing. There was just, you had a brand, you published a paper, book or magazine, and then you made your money. And then the internet came along. So that's when we hopped on the train of helping publishers produce this content. And I think part of that was also because there was a lot of love for independent publishing and the strength of independent journalism, which has always been at the core of our business as well.
I remember from back in the day, it used to be Elvis. Elvis was the system for publishing. Just in terms of the types of content that you're managing and how that's changed over the years. I mean, could you talk a bit about that?
I think the main change has been that the diversification of content. So we started out with content production, which was basically it's a product called Studio. So that's the whole production chain that publishers go through. And the other part is more the asset repository. And Elvis is still alive. It's called Woodwing Assets nowadays. So that's basically the heart of the content, the content hub of the publishing houses. And what you see nowadays is that this where we used to work mainly for print, creating a PDF in the end for text and images. There's been so many new things pop up over the last 20 years. So the internet, we started out with free format content. Then we got paywalls. We got social media. We got a lot of competition from new digital brands. So the amount of content that publishers have had to create and the variety of content has increased, and it's become a really complex game for publishers to manage all that.
Yeah, so internet, of course, was quite disruptive at the time for publishing. And you really want to hop on that train and make sure that you continue to create content and to remain in business. Is that still one of the biggest challenges today for publishers, or are there any other challenges that they're facing?
Yeah, I think it's led to. I mentioned in the beginning that there was a brand. You had a brand, and you had basically one channel, and that's where you made your money. And nowadays, as a publishing house, you have to You have so many different channels where you make your money. So you might have different websites, you might have your social media channels. Maybe as an educational publisher, you have to develop a complete learning management system, for example, with all kinds of digital resources that you also have to produce. And that can be very different, ranging from just regular videos and images to interactive stuff or HTML types of objects. So the diversity has increased enormously. And obviously, it's still the challenge is to follow your readers and follow your consumers, because they are also changing their behaviors continuously. When we started giving away content for free initially in the internet age, I mean, if content is the heart of your business, that's actually quite a bad idea. So it's still, of course, it's still a challenge to monetize the content. But it's also a challenge to diversify through all these different channels with the same team. So that's made efficiency of production and efficiency of publishing a critical component for publishers.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the business models for publishing have changed so much over the last 20 years. I've been working on a project with an academic publisher around open access publishing, for example, where the reader is not the person that pays for it. It's the academic institution or potentially the author. I mean, I just wonder, how has your systems sort of evolved to handle these different business models? I'm guessing it requires a lot more sort of integration with other systems.
Yeah, it's quite critical right now that you have what we call open APIs, that you have an open architecture to be able to integrate with different platforms. If we look at the whole content workflow, obviously there's different tools that you can use around the whole content process, and starting from planning to production and publishing. But you never know what's going to happen next year. So, for example, when the Apple Watch came out, we started to create content together with Lonely Planet, for example, where we basically had the idea that it would be great if you could use Lonely Planet and then create some sort of a navigation tool when you were in the city, and then you could read stuff about different highlights in the city. I don't think it was a great success, but it's just to state that you don't know what's coming, but you still have to be able to do something and to use your content and to turn it around in such a way that you can start reusing it for a completely different purpose. So that does mean lots of integration, but it also means that you need to be very agile in your development process. It needs to be that you also, and that's what we also see in publishing houses nowadays, that they are also becoming software companies in a way, because most of the bigger ones have their own development departments, have their own teams that are able to basically create as they go along integrations to other channels and to other parties.
Yeah, you were just describing that publishing, your product is the content you create, and there's nothing out there that is comparison to that. So where do you get your innovation ideas from?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question. I actually think that the publishing industry, and that it's often seen as there's a lot of legacy technology in there, but it's actually one of the most innovative industries when it comes to content. And that's because they've always been looking how can we monetize our content and what are new ways to make, to create new business models. A great example, before iPad came along in 2010, I think this must have been around 2007. And I was in one of the major newspaper publishers in the UK in 2011 when the iPad did come out. And there was a big tablet sitting in a display case in the office of the executive that I was visiting at the time. And I asked him what it was. And it was actually a tablet that they'd been inventing. It had been a project, cost £30 million at the time. And it was their own their own iPad, basically. So they had been developing stuff like this before Apple actually did. And that's what we see continuously, that over the past, I think, 25, 30 years, newspapers have always been the most creative and inventive when it comes to technology. If you look at educational companies, they've had to adjust continuously and say, okay, we have to create a learning management system. How do we do this? How do we make sure that we produce all this content and get it to the right place in the right time? So that is continuously learning how you do stuff with content in a completely new way, how you create new structures, how you create new types of exports and new publishing channels as well, because every channel also needs to be created. It always has to be on brand, and it has to be in line with all the other channels. So that is a continuous innovation journey, and I think the publishing industry has done a great job in that over the last decades, basically, because we said print is dead, and we've been saying that for about 20 years. And I'm pretty sure we'll do less print still over the next decades, but it will still be there as well, and it will be there next to other channels.
It's also about the customer. So if you want to monetize content, we always talk about Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Millennial, Boomer, whatever, and obviously the younger people get their content from different channels. I think the majority of youngsters and really youngsters get their information from Instagram and TikTok, compared to I'm having a news app and then someone else is doing just the physical paper. The boomers, they still prefer that. And in all honesty, I enjoy my weekend paper as well, with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. So that must be extremely challenging to on the one hand, you have all these innovative technologies, but then you also have these different target audiences that you need to apply to. Must be challenging.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other areas where publishing houses have done a fantastic job, is that they know very well who their audiences are. So publishers have been working with customer relationship management tools and data around their clients for a long time. And actually they know very well what are the target audiences, what are the different brands that they can work with across these target audiences. So especially the bigger publishing houses, they all have a profile, and wherever you log on, they will know who you are and they will know what you've done before. And that means that there's a very strong position for them towards for the advertising industry, for example, because they have this very close relationship with their customers. And that, I think that goes across the publishing industries, the different segments, from entertainment to newspapers and educational. And that's not to say that they all have their different challenges, but they know who the customer is and they know how to follow.
I'm glad you said that publishing is on the leading edge of innovation around content, because I don't think that's said enough. What are your thoughts around AI and machine learning in publishing, and how have you used some of that technology?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Matt. AI currently has so many shapes and forms, but there's different ways in which publishers actually use them nowadays. So everybody's basically experimenting with AI, right? And thinking about how can this help our business, how can this grow our business, and what's in it for us. And some are doing small proofs of concept, but I also know publishing houses that have big programs around AI because they really feel that this is going to transform their business. So I think you need to create it, to segment the different publishing industries to get an understanding of how this works. So, for example, if I look at educational and academic publishing houses, they are quite hesitant to use AI. And talking to these clients, I can see that there's a big risk in using AI for that area. On the other hand, if you look at some of the educational publishing houses, we are using, for example, AI to create different images for school books based on AI. I mean, that's an example of a very good option where it usually could take weeks to get the right imagery together. AI can really help you to, on the one hand, search, and on the other hand, create stuff if you don't have it in your image library. If we look at the in general across the publishing industry, I think one of the big areas where this really helpful is to basically increase productivity. And then we're talking about stuff like, think of a nice header for my article, help editors with doing copy fitting, perhaps creating good URLs or search criteria for going online. If I look at print, there is a big trend that we are moving to layout automation. I do think print is here to stay, but I'm not saying this is a growth market. And for many publishing houses, print really has to pay for the digital transformation over the next years. And this is why layout automation is a critical technology. So basically making sure that machine learning can help you do the layout of your pages. Another area where we see AI come up is, for example, in doing searches. So there's a lot of, as you are aware, you are both also DAM experts in that particular area. What we can see is that there's so many image libraries, video libraries, asset libraries that are completely unstructured, that lack proper metadata. And we've done first tests with vector search capabilities, for example. There's different samples in the market, so like Pinecone, WeAviate. So these vector database can actually help you in a very fast and efficient way to make your library, your asset library, a lot more flexible and searchable. So that will really help you to actually search stuff much more efficiently, gather stuff. I'm writing an article about a specific topic, look into my asset library for something, and it will come up with these things in seconds, and you will have a choice to pick from. And this is something that's completely impossible in the old-fashioned structured way that we use to structure DAM systems and content systems, because that all depended on either tagging stuff manually, either at home or offshore, or semi-automated. But right now we actually have technology that will allow you to basically to tag your content completely and describe your content completely automated and search for it. And that's really fantastic innovation. So those are the main areas, I think, where we see that AI will change the face of the industry.
One of the things, obviously, that has been discussed is how do you trust the content created by AI? And I can imagine especially for in the news industry, so in the branch of news, AI isn't always very good on its sources, and it can just lie or just fake something. So with the whole fake news and the whole AI news, what do you think? Is there a future at all in the news industry or the publishing industry when it comes to generating content? And how do you ensure that what you are producing can be trusted so that you remain a trusted source?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important values in using AI is that you always need humans. And I think another important value is that people buy the content from your brand because they trust your brand. Yeah. So I think that if your brand starts using AI to create content, besides a header or a summary or stuff like that, I think it's quite a gray area, and it's quite risky, because if people find out that things have been written by AI instead of journalists, they might actually not like that so much. And I think it's also a big legal risk. We know that most of these models have been trained using content from publishers, actually. that has been scraped online, and I mean we're moving in such a fast pace that we almost forget that there's going to be lots of lawsuits against these AI companies, and the question is, will these lawsuits not be too late? So besides that, I think if you want consumers to trust your brand, or your customers, but can also be a B2B customer, I think it's really important that they know there is a human actor actually creating the content and thinking about this from a human perspective and not from an AI perspective.
It's fascinating listening to you, Hans, because that's a lot of that topic is related to the presentation I'm going to be giving at Henry Stewart. And I think with great power comes great responsibility. And I think not enough companies have an AI strategy with an ethical framework as a central pillar, being transparent about how you use AI. And I think also being responsible for the output of AI, knowing that some of the models are biased by their very nature.
I think that what we do see in a lot of these publishing, in the bigger publishing houses, that they are training their own AI models. So they're actually using AI to train a model that is completely based on their own content and their way of writing across different brands. On the other hand, this is already in every publisher that I know of a board level decision, and nobody is allowed to use AI without the executive level knowing that this is happening. So it is actually being centralized. Publishers are very much aware, I think, that this is an opportunity, but also a big risk, and so they're threading carefully around this.
Do you see any other trends that shape the future of publishing, and how do you prepare for those?
If you look more at the entertainment side of things, usually magazines, consumer magazines, there's obviously, and you mentioned the boomer generation, they're probably still reading most of the magazines. So I think this is not so much to do with technology as it is with remaining on brand and finding your niche market. And there are some really good examples across EMEA of brands that have actually created new magazines. And what they all have in common is that none of them are in one channel. And because they all need to be in different places. They need to be in social media, but they do have such a strong link to their consumers and to their readers that they are able to make money and have a strong position in the advertising market. But there's going to be, that's going to be the big change in that side of things. If you look at other areas, academic, educational, Matt already mentioned, there's going to be changes around who owns the content. So that's another trend I think we're seeing, is that, and then you also see that in the book market, and there will be publishers will be challenged, and that has been going on for a longer time. So there will always be a challenge to remain relevant and to make sure that your reputation is actually protected. And so this is again not so much a technology trend, but this is much more about how do we position ourselves in the marketplace? How do we manage our relationship with authors, with our ecosystem, basically? And obviously, I think a big trend is that you do need technology expertise because it will keep changing. Digital is very much in the infancy, I think, still. I think we're seeing a lot of change technologically, but also functionally. The systems that we have nowadays will allow us to really personalize your content in such a way that you get delivered content by publishers in a way that you want at the time that you want to consume it. But also it's kind of a push-pull relationship. I think a great example is the Atlantic. I really love the way that they're really a niche publisher. They have a specific audience that may be with a specific political orientation, even, I might say, but they deliver new articles every day almost, and you get pushed these articles, and then immediately you have one or two really great articles every day, so you can start reading them. And I think that's the type of journalism that's going to define the future, and there will always be an audience for that type of independent journalism, I think.
So then here comes the final question, and this is the question we love most. So if there's one thing that you can change to become totally content, what would it be?
Become your own publisher. I think we've had many examples of people doing that nowadays, and I think that would be great, just to see a further diversification of independent publishing. I think that would be fantastic if we get to that.
I love that. I'm all for it.
Very good. Yes, absolutely. No, I thought you were going to say running machines in the office, Hans, based on your interests and yeah. But
I like to do it outside, Matt, as you know. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Hans. It's been great talking to you, and I look forward to catching up in person at the Henry Stewart conference in London later next month.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.